संसारदावानललितलोका त्रणयकारुण्य घन घनात्वं संसारदावानललितलोका त्रणयकारुण्य घन घनात्वं प्राप्तस्य कल्याण गुणार्णवस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् तस्य कल्याण गुणार्णवस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् महाप्रभु कीर्तन नृत्य गीता वादित्रमाद्यान् मनसोरसेना प्रभु कीर्तन नृत्य गीता वादित्रमाद्यान् मनसोरसेना रोमाञ्चकम्पा श्रुतरङ्गभाजो वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रुतरङ्गभाजो वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रीविग्रहाराधननित्यनाना शृङ्गारतन्मन्दिरमर्जनादो राधननित्यनाना दिरमर्जनादो युक्तस्य भक्तांश्च नियुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् युक्तस्य भक्तांश्च नियुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् चतुर्विधा श्रीभगवत्प्रसाद स्वाद्वन्न तृप्तान् हरिभक्तसङ्घान् श्रीभगवत्प्रसाद हरिभक्तसङ्घान् तीर्थैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्नाम् माधवयोरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्ना प्रतीक्षणास्वादनलोलुपस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् निकुञ्जयूनो रतकेलिसिद्धै यायालिभिर्युक्तिरपेक्षणीया रतकेलिसिद्धै यायालिभिर्युक्तिरपेक्षणीया तत्रातिदक्षादतिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् साक्षादरित्वेन समस्तशास्त्रैरुक्तस्तथा भाव्यत एव सद्भिः समस्तशास्त्रैरुक्तस्तथा भाव्यत सद्भिः किन्तु प्रभोया प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो प्रसादात् भगवत् प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादान् नगति कुतोऽपि प्रसादात् भगवत् प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादात् नगति कुतोऽपि ध्यायां शुभं तस्य यस्य स्त्रीसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं शुभं तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं श्रीचरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा श्री चैतन्य चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा श्री चैतन्य चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा चैतन्य चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Shyam Sundar Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Shyam Sundar Shri Radhe Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Ma Jaya Sudarshan Chakra Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Ma Jaya Sudarshan Chakra Jaya Sitaram Sitaram Jaya Lakshmana Hanuman Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha 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 Jaya Gaura Nitai 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Namaste Narasimhaya Prahaladaladaine Hiranyakashipurvakshaha Shilatankanakalaye Ito Narsimho Parato Narsimho Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha Bahe Narsimho Hridaye Narsimho Narasimha Madhim Sharanam Prabhade Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakam Abhuta Singha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanurindam Keshavadirata Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadirata Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jayo Narsimha Dev Jayo Narsimha Dev Jayo Narsimha Dev Jayo Narsimha Dev Jayo Prahalad Maharaj Jayo Prahalad Maharaj Jayo Prahalad Maharaj Jayo Prahalad Maharaj Jayo Jayo Prabhupada 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Jayo Gurudev Gurudev गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो ये अभिलाषी राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो ये अभिलाषी जे तुम्हार शरण लय तारा वांछ पूर्ण होय कृपा करी करो तारे वृंदावनवासी दासे को ये न मोरा होय श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये नवासी श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये नभासी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव जय गुरुदेव प्रियाय केशवस्य च कृष्णभक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्तवत्ताय नमो नमः वृन्दाय तुलसीदेव्याय प्रियाय केशवस्य च कृष्णभक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्तवत्ताय नमो नमः वृन्दाय तुलसीदेव्याय प्रियाय केशवस्य च कृष्णभक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्तवत्ताय नमो नमः
I beg you to make me a follower, Carl Danso's Virgin. Please give me the privileged devotional service and make me own maid servant. This very fallen lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in the love, Shishirada and Govinda. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani ki jai. There are 10 fences in the matter of chanting holy names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the name of the demigods Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature pursuing the Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities and strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritual activities, often the Veda as fruitive activities, karma, ganda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glory of the holy name. 10. To not complete faith in the chanting holy names, and to maintain material attachments in your understanding. So many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses. In order to quickly achieve desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us have most humble obeisances on all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord.
They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone. And they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpa, Tiribhischa, Kripasindubhyevicha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnava Thakur Kichi. Namam Spadasta.
Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Jeto Darpana Marjanam Pavamahadavakni Nirvapanam Shriya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pradipadam Purnamita Sadanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smaranena Kalaha Etadishi Tava Kripa Bhagavam Mamapi Durudeva Midisham Yaha Janina Nurakaha Trinatapi Sunicena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadaharihi Nathanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagadisha Kamaya Mama Jammani Jammanishware Pavata Bhaktir Haituki Tvai Ayinanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stitatuli Satesham Vichintaya Nayanam Garadashurudaraya Vatanam Katkada Rudaya Gira Purakai Nichitam Bapur Kata Tava Nama Krahane Bhavishati yuga itam nimishena chakshusha pravisha itam shunya itam jagat sarvam govinda virahe name ashri shava padratam pinnashtumam adarsanam marmhatam karotuva yatha tatha va vidathatu lampato mad prananatha susa eva na paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Glory to Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes fire conditional life, a repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction of humanity at large, because it spreads a rays and benediction moon. It is the light of all transcendent knowledge. It increases the ocean transcendent bliss, and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction human beings. Thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendent names are vested all transcendent energies. They are not even hard and fast rules of chanting these names. O my Lord, out kindness enables us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking of himself Lord and enjoy his streak. One should be more taller than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Sahamarnanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death, and place me at one's Adam, the lotus feet. O Almighty, when my eyes spectacular tears love flowing constant when I chant the holy name. When my voice choke up, all hair in my body stand and the recitation of your own name. O Govinda, feeling of separation and constant moment to be like a great millennium. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and shall remain so. You handle me roughly by his embrace. How makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipable Lord, unconditionally.
Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai.
Om Magyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Soyam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurung Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachadate Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namini Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayine Prabhavin Namaha Madhuyo Chala Premadya Shri Rupa Nuga Bhaktita Shri Gaura Karana Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Pasiddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sasha Varyaka Murtaye Vipalambara Sambodhe Padam Pujayate Namaha Namo Mahavunudaya Sachidananda Namini Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumistvam Nirdishta Sajana Priya Vaishnava Savabhama Shri Jaganathaya Te Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Pyevacha Patitanam Pavne Pyo Vaishnave Pyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurati Shin Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakham Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karna Sindho Dinapanto Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jaitam Suratoro Pango Mama Mandar Matekati Masarva Sampam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vindaranya Kaupajumadha Shimadra Nagara Singhasanasto Shrimad Radha Shri Govinda Devo Prishtari Pi Sevamano Smarami Shriman Rasarasaram Divam Sivata Tatastita Karsham Vinu Saner Gopir Gopinatha Shayestana Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishapanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Dada Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Shri Brahmasamita Ki Jai.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukhapraviksha Lakshariteshu Surabi Rapipalayantam Lakshmi Saharsa Shatasam Pramasevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami Venum Konantam Aravinda Dalayataksam Parharvatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kantarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shubham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami Vanam Rachantra Kalasavanamadavam Shiranam Kadam Panayakiri Kalavilasam Shamam Tripankalalitam Yata Prakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami Anganyasya Sakalindriya Vittimanti Pashanti Panti Karayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chimmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami Advaitam Achotam Anadi Mananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durabam Atmam Bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami Pantastukoti Shatavasara Samprakamyo Vayuratapi Manaso Munipangavana Sopyastya Prapata Simya Vichinta Tatve Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami Ekopya Sora Chaitum Jagatanta Kotim Ya Shakti Rasti Jagatanta Jayayatanta Vandantasta Paramanu Chayantarastham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami Yabhava Bhavitatiyo Manujastateva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasanyana Bhusha Suktaryam Eva Nikama Patitai Stuvanti Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami Yadbanda Yadbhava
Tabir Yevan Charupa Tayakalabi
Goloka Eva Nyosati Kala
Mabuto Govinda Madi
Purusham Tamaham Pajami Premanjana Churuta Pati Vidushanena Santa Sadeva Hitayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Sham Srunda Machintya Guna Swarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami Ramati Murtishu Kala Yamena Tishtan Nanavatarama Karo Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Parama Pumam Yo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami.
Shri Brahmasamita Ki Jai. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Go ahead.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with a figure of beauty tinged with hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers, beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Shyamasundara is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of the transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, he is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha. Yet he is the person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveniences, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm Goloka, with Radha resembling his own spiritual figure. The embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities in the company of her confidant Sakis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shyamasundara Krishna himself with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrisimha, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portions.
Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Glorification of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadyasya yato nivayad itaratascha tesu avigya swarat tene brahma hidaya adhikavaye muyanti yat surayaha tejo varimidam yata vinimayo yachati sargo misha damna srena sadadirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. And by him, even the great sages and demigods are placed in an illusion as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water. Only because of him did the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of material nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.2. Dharma prochita kaitravo tra paramo nimotsaranam satam vedyam vastava matra vastu shivadam tapo trayon mulinam. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Kute Kim Vapare Ishwaraha Sadyo Hidya Varudyate Tra Kuti Vihisa Susabhistakshana. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture as soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam? By this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam sukumukad amrita dravya samyatam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur aho raska bhuvibhavaga. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literature. It emanated from lips that ceased Sukadeva Goswami, therefore this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 12, verse number 12. Manur Mahinaso Mahan Chiva Ritajvaja Ugrareta Bhavakalo Vamano Devatavrata. Okay, so there is the names of Lord Rudra. Manu, Mahinasa, Mahan, Shiva, Ritajvaja, Ugrarita, Bhava, Kala, Vamadeva, Dritavrata, all names of Rudra. Translation. Lord Brahma said, my dear boy Rudra, you have 11 other names, Manu, Mahinasa, Mahan, Shiva, Ritajvaja, Ugrarita, Bhava, Kala, Vamadeva, and Dritavrata. Text 13. Didritira Salomacha
Didrutira Salomacha
Niyut Sarpir Ilambika
Niyut Sarpir Ilambika
Iravati Swada Diksha
Iravati Swadadisha
Rudranyo Rudrate Striya
Rudranyo Rudrate Striya
Di Dviti Rasala Uma Niyut Sarpi Ila Ambika Iravati Swadha Diksha Rudranya, the 11 Ranis, Rudra, O Rudra, te unto you, Striya, wives. Translation. O Rudra, you also have 11 wives, called the Rudranis, and they are as follows. Di, Driti, Rasala, Uma, Niyut, Sarpi, Ila, Ambika, Iravati, Swadha, and Diksha. Text 14. So we'll just read the English now. My dear boy, you may now accept all the names and places designated for you and your different wives. And since you are now one of the masters of the living entities, you may increase the population on a large scale. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Somebody could read? Anybody?
Brahma, as the father of Rudra, selected the wives of his son, his living places, and his names as well. It is natural that one should accept the wife selected by one's father, just as a son accepts the name given by the father, or as he accepts the property offered by the father. That is the general course in increasing the population of the world. On the other hand, the Kumaras did not accept the offerings of their father because they were elevated far beyond the business of generating a great number of sons. As the son can refuse the order of the father for higher purposes, so the father can refuse to maintain his sons in increasing populations because of higher purposes.
Okay. Text 15. The most powerful Rudra, whose bodily color was blue mixed with red, created many offspring exactly resembling him in features, strength, and furious nature. Text 16. The sons and grandsons generated by Rudra were unlimited in number, and when they assembled together, they attempted to devour the entire universe. When Brahma, the father of the living entities, saw this, he became afraid of the situation. Somebody want to read the purport?
Purport. The generations of Rudra, the incarnation of anger, were so dangerous to the maintenance of universal affairs that even Brahma, the father of the living entities, became afraid of them. The so-called devotees or followers of Rudra are also enemies. They are sometimes dangerous even to Rudra himself. Descendants of Rudra sometimes make plans to kill Rudra by the grace of Rudra. That is the nature of his devotees.
Okay, so then, text 17. Brahma told Rudra, O best among the demigods, there is no need for you to generate living entities of this nature. They have begun to devastate everything on all sides with the fiery flames from their eyes, and they have even attacked me. Text 18. My dear son, you had better situate yourself in penance, which is auspicious for all living entities, and which will bring all benediction upon you. By penance only shall you be able to create the universe as it was before. Someone want to read the purport?
In the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation, the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshvara or Shiva, are respectively in charge. Rudra was advised not to destroy while the period of creation and maintenance was going on, but to situate himself in penance and wait for the time of dissolution when his services would be called for.
Text 19. By penance only can one even approach the personality of Godhead, who is within the heart of every living entity, and at the same time beyond the reach of all senses. Someone can read the purport.
Rudra was advised by Brahma to perform penance as an example to his sons and followers that penance is necessary for attaining the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the common mass of people follow the path shown by an authority. Thus Brahma, disgusted with the Rudra generations and afraid of being devoured by the increase of population, devoured by the increase of population, asked Rudra to stop producing such an unwanted generation and take to penance for attaining the favor of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, we find in pictures that Rudra is always sitting in meditation for the attainment of the favor of the Lord. Indirectly, the sons and followers of Rudra are advised to stop the business of annihilation, following the Rudra principle while the peaceful creation of Brahma is going on.
Okay. Text 20. Shri Maitreya said, thus Rudra, having been ordered by Brahma, circumambulated his father, the master of the Vedas. Addressing him with words of assent, he entered the forest to perform austere penances. Text 21. Brahma, who was empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thought of generating living entities and begot 10 sons for the extension of the generations. Text 22. Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Brigu, Vasista, Daksha, and the 10th son, Narada, were thus born. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Someone can read.
The whole process of the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation is meant to give the conditioned souls a chance to go back home, back to Godhead. Brahma created Rudra to help him in his creative endeavor. But from the very beginning, Rudra began to devour the whole creation, and thus he had to be stopped from such devastating activities. Brahma therefore created another set of good children, who were mostly in favor of worldly fruitive activities. He knew very well, however, that without devotional service to the Lord, there is hardly any benefit for the conditioned souls, and therefore he at last created his worthy son Narada.
He at last created his
worthy son Narada, who is the supreme spiritual master of all transcendentalists. Without devotional service to the Lord, one cannot make progress in any department of activity, although the path of devotional service is always independent of anything material. Only the transcendental loving service of the Lord can deliver the real goal of life, and thus the service rendered by Srimad Narada Muni is the highest among all the sons of Brahma.
Okay, we read one more. Narada was born from the deliberation of Brahma, which is the best part of his body. Vasisti was born from his breathing, Daksha from his thumb, Brigu from his touch, and Kratu from his hand. Purport. Someone can read.
Narada was born from the best deliberation of Brahma because Narada was able to deliver the Supreme Lord to anyone he liked. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be realized by any amount of Vedic knowledge or by any number of penances. But a pure devotee of the Lord, like Narada, can deliver the Supreme Lord by his good will. The very name Narada suggests that he can deliver the Supreme Lord. Nara means the Supreme Lord, and Da means one who can deliver. That means the supreme. That he can deliver the Supreme Lord does not mean that the Lord is like a
Commodity
that can be delivered to any person. But Narada can deliver to anyone the transcendental loving service of the Lord as a servitor, friend, parent, or lover.
as a servitor.
Servitor,
Yeah.
friend, parent, or lover, as one may desire out of one's own transcendental love for the Lord. In other words, it is Narada only who can deliver the path of Bhakti Yoga, the highest mystic means for attainment of the Supreme Lord.
Very good. So yesterday, the question was asked, and I wanted to answer that question. So Mataji, you asked the question, right? Why don't you repeat it?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, the question was, because we have different 11 forms of Rudra, is the Rudra created by Brahma, is Lord Shiva, or one of the Rudras?
Is the what?
Is Lord Shiva himself, because he is higher, his planet is higher than Brahma's. So
Okay, so, and then you gave the example of a story about
Uh,
Lord
Lord-
Shiva.
Lord Vishnu and Brahma fighting who is the
who is
greatest.
supreme.
Yeah.
And
Then there was an energy which generated. That's what I have seen from Maharaj in the stories. That Lord Shiva comes out and he's the one who
right. Okay. So he looks like he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right?
in that.
So first of all, there are 18 Puranas. Puranas are ancient histories of the material world. And they're divided into 3 parts. 6 Puranas are in the mode of ignorance, 6 Puranas are in the mode of passion, and 6 Puranas are in the mode of goodness. So, the Puranas in ignorance are the Matsya, Kurma, Skanda, Linga, and Shiva and Agni. Matsya Purana, Kurma Purana, Skanda Purana, Linga Purana, Shiva Purana, and Agni Purana. Then the Puranas in the mode of rajas, or passion, are Bhavishya Purana, Brahmanda Purana, Brahma, Vaivarta Purana, Markandeya Purana, and the Brahma Purana. Then the Puranas in the mode of goodness are the Bhagavatam, or Srimad Bhagavatam, Garuda Purana, Naradiya Purana, Vishnu Purana, Padma Purana, and Varaha Purana. Now, what does this mean exactly? That means that there are Puranas for different categories of people. And in the writings of Sri, one second, let me just find this. In the writings of Sri Jiva Goswami, who's a top authority in Krishna consciousness, so it says, thus the Vedas, as the Skanda Purana tells us, have just cause to fear abuse at the hands of the Brahmanas of our age. Hearing the Vedas call for help, the Puranas have come to assist. The instructions of the Puranas are as trustworthy as the original words of the Vedas. What need is there for speculative commentaries on the Vedas? Then, since the natural commentary on the Vedas is already available in the Puranas, but we live in corrupt times when people need more definite guidance to find the correct path of spiritual progress. Even the Puranas, easy to understand and easy in earlier ages, often bewilder disoriented modern readers because demigod worship gradually purifies those who are too materialistic to have an interest in pure devotional service. The Puranas, to appeal to people of many different natures, encourage worship of demigods alongside worship of the Supreme Lord. The universe passes through varying cycles, days of Brahma, during which the lower material modes, the modes of passion, rajas, and ignorance, tamas, are at times prominent. That's like right now. During those periods, the Supreme Lord gracefully allows such servants of his as Lord Shiva to defeat him in competition and otherwise seem superior. Puranas that describe the events of these rajasic and tamasic kalpas thus superficially seem to elevate demigods to the position of God. It is no wonder that imperfectly informed students of the Puranas cannot discern the unity of the underlying Puranic message, that the powerful controllers and wonderful opulences of this universe are all energies of the supreme energetic, the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Such readers are unable to grasp the statement from the Harivamsa Purana. Vede Ramayane Chaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Cha Madhya Cha Hari Sarvatra Giyate. Throughout the Vedas and everywhere in the Ramayana, Puranas, and the Mahabharata, from the beginning to the middle to the end, the praises of Lord Hari or Krishna are sung. As a source of further confusion, portions of the Puranas are now missing, and in some cases have been replaced with spurious or false substitutes. In recent centuries, the Brahminical community has become less and less familiar with several of the more rarely preserved Puranas. Thus, unscrupulous scribes or scholars are now able to distort the text without being detected. The commentaries of reliable authorities provide the only sure protection against such adulterated texts. More than 600 years ago, Srila Sridhara Swami commented on both Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vishnu Purana, taking special care to certify the wording of almost every verse. For the other Puranas, however, there are no such verse-by-verse commentaries by standard acharyas, only citations of isolated passages. Okay, so this is very important to understand. That, one, why did Prabhupada choose to translate and comment on the Bhagavad Gita? And then, why did he choose to translate and comment on Srimad Bhagavatam? Because these two scriptures, as well as some Puranas, were validated by Sridhar Swami 600 years ago by going over every verse himself, right, and making sure that they were correct. This hasn't been done for all the Puranas. So because of that, there's a lot of distortion and confusion. And we see today that there are different stories, like the one you were talking about, Mataji, in which it looks like Lord Shiva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we just heard that, and sometimes it's necessary that people worship someone superior than themselves. So therefore, in certain places, emphasis is put on worship of the demigods, because at least they're now worshiping someone superior to themselves. That means that they humble themselves to someone. But ultimately, that doesn't ultimately solve the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. Therefore, Prabhupada did not translate any of the other Puranas, nor did he spend time. He just focused on Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and the Nectar of Devotion and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Those are bona fide scriptures, and they're not teaching the worship of demigods. They teach the respect for the demigods, no doubt about that, but not worshiping the demigods as equal. As many people in India today, they say, well, all the gods are equal. It's not true. And because of that, there's complete confusion. Then they go to these Rajasic and Tamasic Puranas, and they find stories that seem to indicate that Shiva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or this one or that one is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then you get into this confusion about who exactly is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no confusion in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Vedanta Sutra, it says, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now let us inquire into the nature of the absolute truth. And then it says, the next verse says, Chanmadashyata. The supreme absolute truth is that from which everything emanates. Now, then it continues, these different sutras. So even after writing all these scriptures, in other words, Vyasadeva wrote, or he compiled the 4 Vedas, and then he wrote the Puranas, and then he codified also the Upanishads, and then the Mahabharata, and then the Vedanta Sutra. And after all that, he felt dissatisfied. And he wasn't quite sure why he was dissatisfied. He had a good hunch, but he inquired from his guru, Narada Muni. And Narada said, well, you've written so much, but you emphasized more karma kanda, or materialistic pursuits. You emphasize that more than pure devotional service. So now, go back and rewrite, or write now, the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is uniquely glorifying Lord Krishna, so that people are not confused about who God is. So obviously, a lot of people are confused about who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he goes back and he begins. He says, in other words, that from which everything emanates, he clearly enumerates what that is, or says what that is, or who that is. So he says, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So that's the answer right there, that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of everything. And that's the answer to the original question of the Vedanta Sutra. And then the whole Bhagavatam validates that by explaining every little detail about Krishna and his pastimes, so that there's no doubt that the Supreme Absolute Truth is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he has expansions such as the different Vishnu expansions, and his first expansion is Balaram, and from Balaram, the first Chaturvyuha, and then from Sankarsana, the first Chaturvyuha, the second Chaturvyuha, and then from the second Chaturvyuha, the expansion of the Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Shirodakshay Vishnu, and then Shirodakshay Vishnu is the source of all avatars in the material world, and there are trillions and trillions of expansions of Shirodakshay Vishnu present in the heart of every living entity, and in every atom of the universe. So all these are transcendental expansions of the Lord. They're not mundane. They're not subject to the material nature, and they're non-different than the Lord. But the Lord has 100%, Krishna has 100% attributes of pure love and devotion. And the Vishnu incarnations have up to about 94%, and Lord Shiva 80-some%, and Lord Brahma 78%. So Brahma is a jiva, so we have a potential of achieving 78% of the opulences or the qualities of the Lord. So in this way, this is explained by the acharyas, and there's no doubt that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, the confusion continues because of all the different qualities. Therefore, unless we come to to sattva guna, we could be easily sidetracked by the misinterpretation of the lower Puranas, such as the Rajasic Puranas and the Tamasic Puranas. And we end up questioning or even doubting the supremacy of Lord Krishna. Okay, so that's why you see these stories, right? Because you have these three levels of Puranas. And you have misconceptions. Like, for example, if you look at the Arya Samaj rejects deity worship. And they say you should only study the Vedas. And the Vedas, you should not read them, you should memorize them. Now, who's going to do that? I remember one man came to our temple long time ago when we had a big, small house here. And he saw me doing deity worship. And then I did some kirtan, I gave a class. And afterwards he said, hey, you know, everything you did looked pretty nice, but it's not bona fide. I said, really? He said, yes. He said, what you have to do is first, you must learn the Sanskrit alphabet. Then you must learn how to recite the Sanskrit. And they went through a whole list of things that you have to do. All things that I probably would never do completely. I might try, but I might not be able to do it. He said, and he said, and you don't do this deity worship. He said, you have to do Agnihotram, morning and evening. And he went through this whole list of things. So I didn't want to argue with him, but then I realized how confusing it has to be for people in India when you have a whole movement of people, the Arya Samaj, rejecting deity worship and basically making it almost impossible for most people to be able to advance in their system of education. That doesn't mean nobody can advance, but it's very difficult. You know, I mean, who's going to learn the Sanskrit alphabet? Who's going to learn how to recite all the mantras? Who's going to learn how to understand context of the meanings in Sanskrit? You know, they're all highly technical things that require a lot of training. Whereas Prabhupada said, look, just chant Hare Krishna and be happy and take prasadam and dance and listen to Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. He didn't say, you know, listen to the Tamasic Puranas or the Rajasic Puranas. He said, listen to the best Purana, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the purest of all the Puranas. Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraj Ki Jai. So you see how Prabhupada cut through all that mass of truth, half-truth, non-truth, etc., and presented the essence. The essence of all knowledge is Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And in Kali Yuga, Golokira Premadana, Harinama Sankirtana. Lord Chaitanya brought the Harinam Sankirtan mantra down from the spiritual world to make it easy for everyone to to simply chant Hare Krishna and go back to Godhead. So, on one hand, you have to learn Sanskrit. That takes 12 to 15 years. You have to learn pronunciation. You have to learn contextual interpretation, this thing, that thing. How many people are going to do that? How many people have time to do that? You see? And is it actually right? No, because in the end, you still are not going to go back to Godhead because they reject deity worship. In other words, they reject the idea that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we have so many different movements in India under the, under Hinduism, and many of them have actually deviated from pure, following of the Vedic knowledge, unfortunately. And most of them emphasize material benefits through different types of pujas or ceremonies or rituals. So that may give temporary, let's say, relief or temporary, let's say, satisfaction to people who feel as if by performing those materialistic rituals, their material position improves. But that is a temporary thing. It's not going to take someone back to Godhead. One has to be completely cleansed of all material desires and material goals and be focused completely on pleasing Lord Krishna, glorifying the Lord, preaching the glories of the Lord, and engaging in devotional service to the Lord without any material motive. So such pure devotional service is the real, let's say, way of approach going back to Godhead. Simply having temporary material success in the material world is not going to take you back to Godhead. It's going to keep you in the material world. Right? Now, who says that by becoming a pure devotee, one will be, let's say, bereft of assets? No. Like, look at Prabhupada. He comes to America with nothing, with $7 in his pocket. 11 years later, when he leaves his body, he's built a multi-million and now going into billion-dollar movement. So you're never a loser in Krishna consciousness, but you always will be a loser in material consciousness. Loser in the sense that you'll have a period of success, and it's like, the price of gasoline. Sometimes it's, $2.50. Sometimes it goes up to $7 or $8. So it's fluctuating like this all the time. So that's what's happening when one is engaged in materialistic ceremonies and materialistic goals. It's fluctuating. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not successful. That only creates confusion. It doesn't create certitude about who you are and what your relationship with Krishna is. Okay, so I wanted to explain that. Did you know that there are 3 types of Puranas? Some in the mode of ignorance, some in the mode of rajasic, and some in the mode of goodness. Did you know that? You did? Okay. So when you read the stories or the different pastimes in the rajasic and tamasic Puranas, you will get misled. And it's better. That's why Prabhupada does not emphasize any of those scriptures. He doesn't reject them because they are Vedic literatures, but he doesn't emphasize them. He emphasizes Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita so that we don't lose time, we don't get, let's say, off track of pure devotional service. Okay. So then, now we see that Brahma's best son is Narada Muni, and he's the second person in our disciplic succession, which begins from Brahma and Narada and Vyasa and so forth. So let's hear a little bit more about Narada Muni. Yeah. So it says, let's read that purport again, text 22. Someone can read it. It's not on. The microphone's not on.
Hare Krishna. The whole process of the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation is meant to give the conditioned soul a chance to go back home, back to Godhead.
Okay, you just turned it off. Yeah. Go ahead.
Brahma created Rudra to help him in his creative endeavor, but from the very beginning, Rudra began to devour the whole creation, and thus he had to be stopped from such devastating activities. Brahma therefore created another set of good children who were mostly in favor of worldly fruitive activities.
So who were mostly in favor of worldly fruitive activities. That means material activities. That means pujas for material benefit.
Brahma therefore created another set of good children who were mostly in favor of worldly fruitive activities. He knew very well, however, that without devotional service of the Lord, there is hardly any benefit for the conditioned soul, and therefore he at last created his worthy son Narada, who is the supreme spiritual master of all transcendentalists. Without devotional service to the Lord, one cannot make progress in any department of activity, although the part of devotional service is always independent of anything material. Only the transcendental loving service of Lord can deliver the real goal of life. And thus the service rendered by Srimad Narad Muni is the highest among all the sons of Brahma.
There you are. So, therefore, we're in the Brahma Sampradaya. So, we give utmost respect to Narada Muni and, of course, Lord Brahma and Vyasadeva and so forth, and all the members of that Sampradaya. And the goal of the Brahma Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya is to help everyone go back to Godhead, become liberated from the cycle of birth and death, and go back to Godhead. That's the supreme goal of life. It's not to become a rich millionaire. It's not to enjoy unlimited sense gratification on the heavenly planets. Of course, you can be elevated to those positions through doing different tapasyas or different types of quasi-spiritual, quasi meaning somewhat spiritual activities. But it's not going to solve the problem of going back to Godhead. So now we see the uniqueness of the teaching that Prabhupada is giving us. He's not diverting our attention to other scriptures that may have influence of rajasic or tamasic concepts. So that means that Prabhupada is the most merciful person because he's directly giving us pure Krishna consciousness. And that's what Lord Chaitanya was teaching 500 years ago, is pure Krishna consciousness. He was not compromising the purity of the devotees' activities, thoughts, and their endeavors to glorify the Lord. So we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? So that story about how Lord Shiva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's there in the Puranas, but as it said, as we read, that sometimes Krishna permits those type of pastimes to take place. Let's see where it says that. The universe passes through varying cycles or days of Brahma, during which the lower material modes, the modes of passion, rajas, and ignorance, tamas, are at times prominent. Well, that's right now. During those periods, the Supreme Lord gracefully allows such servants of his as Lord Shiva to defeat him in competition and otherwise seem superior. Puranas that describe the events of these rajasic and tamasic kalpas thus superficially seem to elevate demigods to the position of God. It is no wonder that imperfectly informed students of the Puranas cannot discern the unity of the underlying Puranic message, that the powerful controllers and wonderful opulences of this universe are all energies of the supreme energetic, the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Such readers are unable to grasp the statements from the Harivamsa Purana. Throughout the Vedas and everywhere in Ramayana, Puranas, and Mahabharata, from the beginning to the middle to the end, the praise of Lord Hari or Krishna are sung. So that should clarify any doubts we have about why sometimes the demigods are considered superior to Krishna. So any questions or comments? All this is evidence that what Prabhupada has given us is the best of the best. He doesn't want us to be sidetracked by materialistic goals. He doesn't deny us the opportunity to have a simple but healthy life and prosperity, in the sense that we have no anxieties and we're not, let's say, in poverty. When you have, I don't see any poverty here. Do you see any poverty here? Yeah, if you go to Seattle, you'll see some poverty, but everyone is doing pretty well, right? So by following the process of devotional service and following the instructions of the acharyas, especially Srila Prabhupada, you'll have everything necessary to going back to Godhead, and it'll be a good life, it'll be a simple life, and you'll be happy. Not be harassed by all the problems in the material world. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this text that I read from, you can find it it's in an article. It's called The Authority of the Puranas, posted by ISKCON Desire Tree, March 6, 2019. And it's a text that comes from the writings of Srila Jiva Goswami, the number one top devotee of the 6 Goswamis. Haribol. Haribol, what happened to your seeker? Oh, okay. There's so much light coming from your head. It's nice.
So he committed to Parth Prabhu about 6 months ago that in summer he'll do it.
Well, we're in the middle of summer, so that's a vow that he kept. That means that you're going to make a lot of spiritual advancement.
Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Satma
Bandhu Mohi Savadana Mate
Bando Muhi Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhava Doriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoy Jahan Hoy Te Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chidne Te Kuriya Agya Arna Gori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Sri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Ese Uttama Bhakti
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva
Chal. चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होय दे अविद्या विनाशा जाय दे ओ प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होय दे अविद्या विनाशा जाते वेदे गाय जहाँ राचरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनारा बंधु ओ श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनारा बंधु ओ लोकनाथ लोके राजीवाना हाँ प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पाद छाया हाँ प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पाद छाया ये बेजास गुसुक द्रेभुवाना श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतित पावना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादिसतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद चैतन्य नित्यानंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajagacha Statara Satara Shishi Simad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Anant Kuti Vaishnava Namacharya Srila Prince Kahosh Nitai Gaur all glories to Samprabhu, all glories to Samprabhu, all glories to Samprabhu, all glories to Shri Guru, Shri Guru, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namaste. The lotus feet of our spiritual
I bow to his lotus with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic Brahma emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of the mercy, the friend of the poor, Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us, give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet, Srila
Srila
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
slowly.
Yeah, go slowly and
Yeah. So, yeah, please. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, that should also.
is not able to.
Faster actually. So that I don't know how to teach. My love, can you show
Yeah.
me that?
Right.
Shafali.
No, you need to see that's where teaching helps, right? You need to slow down,
So
process it.
the faster like so normally tune is anybody can do it, right?
Yeah.
So but in between sometimes right we do like faster, right? Tick 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 tick. So that I don't know how do you do it.
I just watched Susan.
No, that's
No,
all.
but
Now.
you show me that slowly, just very slowly. Or
Or-
do it.
Yeah,
Do it, I'll see
sing and,
what
sing
you're
and,
doing.
do
Right?
it, if that helps.
Okay. Just like that.
Sing and do it if
How
that
about
helps.
you also learn from your brother? You know?
I'm a life